Hi, everyone. I would like to welcome you on behalf of the Institute of Documentary Film. My name is Hanna Kulhankova, and I'm a coordinator of the IDF industry sessions, which bring you online discussions, lectures, and masterclasses every other week. Today's session will be all about film festivals in 2021. We have 5 great guests that will talk about how the COVID-19 pandemic influenced programming and their festivals, or is influencing still. And if it is more difficult to find new and great films once you know that the festival program will not be screened in cinemas but will be online or in a hybrid form. And for the producers and film directors among you who are watching us, you will learn what festivals you should submit your new films to. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the moderator of the evening, Marta Balaga, who is a film journalist and who published in Cineuropa, Variety, and contributes to Finnish film magazine Episodi. Marta, screen is yours. And to all of you, enjoy the discussion, have a great evening, and don't forget to ask questions in the chat.
Welcome, everybody, and thank you, Hannah, for this introduction. So welcome to film festivals in 2021, because we are clearly all done with 2020. We just can't wait for it to be over. And before we begin, I would just love to introduce our guest. As Hannah mentioned, there are five people joining me today. Rebecca De Paz, programmer at Vision du Réel. Hello, Rebecca.
Hi, hello, everybody.
Melanie Iredale, Deputy Director of Sheffield Doc Fest. Hello, Melanie.
Hi, hello.
Victoria Leshchenko, Program Director of Docudays, who is with us also, I can assure. And Christine Camdessus, Managing and Artistic Director of FIPADOC. Hello. And Gerwin Tamsma, a Senior Programmer for International Film Festival, Rotterdam, our last minute addition. We're very happy to welcome you, Gerwin.
I'm not sure if I'm on since my computer froze.
So before we begin, I just wanted to remind everybody who's watching us today that we're here to answer as many questions or worries as possible. So please, if you have any questions, just write them on Facebook, and we're going to make sure to answer them if there is time. And I think we're going to have just the right amount of it. So without further ado, I was wondering, does the current situation, the one that we thought is going to just last for a bit and now just became our new reality, I would say, would you say that it influences already your programming decisions in some way when it comes to some practical choices? But also maybe, are you looking for something else for your audience now? I heard some theories that maybe people are looking for lighter entertainment. I would be curious to hear what is your experience with that? And maybe, Christina, I would love to ask you that, as you're currently in the midst of making some very important decisions.
Hi, thank you, Marta. That's a very difficult question, in fact, because we're still in selections. So there's choices will be made in the coming weeks. What is clear is that we are looking for almost the same number of films, because we don't want to reduce the programming. So we will select around 150 feature films. We have received a few proposals around COVID, and it is true that we're more looking into films that can give you a chance to escape the everyday life than to be back into that. One of the choice we're thinking of is to, because we have a short film selection too, is to dedicate a session around COVID/short film. We have not decided completely yet. I'm very impressed by the number of very good films. I don't know what will happen in 2021, but as for now, we received a lot of films, and they're very impressive level. Yes, we're looking into a film about culture, about artists, about a way to escape a bit everyday life. That I think is important. We're not reducing our number of films, and we're going to try to have the most diverse programming that we would dream of.
It's interesting, this tendency to maybe think about something else for those very unusual editions. I wonder if, Melanie, this is something you might want to think about as well in your case.
Hi, yeah. So we are preparing for June. We have already opened our call for entries, and we too are finding some great stuff is coming through already. We are actually up slightly on entries from this time last year, so it's good to know there's lots of work out there and coming our way. We're really interested in, there are so many kind of other things going on in the world too right now. We're really interested in responding to the conversations around Black Lives Matter. We're really interested in the year of Brexit to look at themes around unity. So there are some kind of particular kind of themes coming from world happenings, in some cases connected to, but also kind of beyond COVID that we're looking for. And I think one of the things that COVID has kind of allowed us to do this year, and one of the things that we'll take with us going forwards is, of course, our events will culminate in the festival in June, and next year, in a hybrid model, both online and physical, still very much standing for physical screenings. But it's kind of giving us, all of this has given us the impetus that we felt we've needed, or maybe kind of wanted for a while, to really explore more year-round programming, more year-round audience development, more activities throughout the year, online and off. And particularly to develop local audiences. It could be that next year physically we are mostly programming for local audiences outside of the industry activity that we do online. And for us, as hard as all of this has been and as many challenges as it brings, there is a kind of opportunity there for more local, like deeper kind of local audience engagement.
And now that you mentioned this wonderful thing that we call a hybrid festival, it's funny how quickly we got used to this description. Maybe that's a question for everybody. I would just love to hear your thoughts on that. Do you think that maybe hybrid festival is something that's here to stay, maybe for longer, maybe forever? Because it seems that many festivals kind of welcomed even the opportunity to have an online platform, to keep in touch with the audience, as you kind of suggested, throughout the whole year. Instead of just sticking to their usual dates. Do you think it might be one thing that we're just going to keep, even if, as I really hope so, we're going to come back to normal one day?
Yeah, we're absolutely committed to sticking with the online platform that we've developed called Slats for our audiences, which for us, for non-industry audiences, is UK only, but I think it was 30% of audiences who engaged with our online platform this year were completely new to DocFest. So clear that we're reaching beyond the usual audiences. And then, of course, our industry activity online managed to engage a number of industry professionals from kind of even further away than would normally be able to travel as normal. And kind of obviously helped with a kind of access issue around, cost of travel and so on. So I think in some ways there's been, opportunities to develop audiences both more locally and globally online that we absolutely want to continue to work with, but at the same time, very much standing for the physical experience in Sheffield also. Once safe to do so for us.
I wonder if anybody has any other thoughts on that. Maybe Gerwin, what do you think? Can it be a positive thing that this hybrid idea it's gonna help the festivals to even find new audiences and maybe just, as I said before, keep in touch? I think your microphone is off.
Yes, no longer. Thank you. So firstly, I think hybrid is not necessarily completely new. I think many festivals, certainly Rotterdam has had, it has developed quite a few online activities already in the past, maybe 25 years already, since really the start of digital and the internet. We already, in some years ago, we had for some years a program called Iredale Live, which connected a live screening to other live screenings around the world, where people could indeed also partake in like asking questions to the cast and crew and director in the cinema in Rotterdam. But we would simultaneously have this, for instance, in Harare or in Ljubljana or in but also, Rotterdam has over the last years had this online streaming platform called Iredale Unleashed, where many older films of the programs are available for to see. So this is so in a way, I think the COVID and as with many other industries and activities in life, it has shown both the weaknesses and the strength and the possibilities of developments that were already there. And I think also for I think for all our festivals, this means that we have some real challenges that come with in terms of budget, of how to find an audience, indeed, as you say. But there are also opportunities. Personally, I think like everybody else, it's not it takes away the way we now have to work on a festival, how we make a festival, how we select films currently. It's not ideal, let's say. I hate it, but because maybe more so for a general festival than maybe for documentary festivals, if I may say so. But I don't make the distinction necessarily between documentary and fiction. But really, at the heart of the festival is the experience to be together in a cinema, to talk afterwards, etc. Which, so in a way, it's almost a paradox to have an online or a hybrid festival. I think because a festival is meant to be festive, and this is just more difficult. Just as we are social human beings, it is difficult to be festive online, at least for me. I will try to make some jokes in a moment, but.
I think that's the challenge today: how to be festive on Zoom or online. And yeah, I mean, you just brought me to something I was already thinking about. How do you try, at least, if you know, I think we all know that this is not going to be the same thing, but how do you try to at least engage people in some ways that maybe create a little bit of this festival atmosphere that we all love and we all care about? I would love to hear about some of your experiences, but maybe also about something you witnessed done successfully, to just have this kind of relationship that goes outside of just watching films, even if those are great films selected especially for your audience. How can you make them a little bit happier and a little bit feeling like they're surrounded by people like they would normally be?
So for us, this is something we're working very hard on. Next to, of course, the selection of the films currently. And unlike FIPADOC, we have decided to really restructure already 2 or 3 times since the rise of COVID. So the final structure will be in early February. We will do the competitions, Tiger competition and big screen competition, and then in June we will do the celebration program and some other programs that we can't do in February. Celebration program for the 50th edition. So really and some events in between. So we hope to make to be able to have a place where people can come to, where like with real screenings and as analog as possible in June. And then certainly we are expecting to have screenings, just physical screenings. So we'll in February for sure in theaters in Rotterdam, but a really limited program. So then with fewer people, this, but we hope to still be with fewer guests, even online guests, fewer filmmakers. The challenge is really to find many different ways to be inclusive, to connect the filmmakers to the audience. So I mean, it's a bit early to say. This is also not my first task, but it is a challenge to be a host also in a digital way, and it's not easy. And I think Zoom is maybe not the best platform. So I think there is more interesting digital platforms already that are being explored, which actually are more or are better in emulating just a chatting environment than this. But
yeah, digital festival host, that could be an interesting new position. I wonder if Rebecca and Victoria, if you have any thoughts on that, on trying to recreate the festival atmosphere, and how could it be done?
Well, I think it's not possible, but
That's it. We're done.
no, yes. I mean, nothing is it's comparable to the experience that we were discussing and that Gerwin was describing, and the thing of being physical together. It's indeed changing also your perception of films, and I think that there are many things that can be tried, like to get at least closer to have something that is festive. Last year, Vision du Réel was one of the first festivals that turned digital because the lockdown in Switzerland was announced 5 weeks before. So the team in Nyon had 5 weeks to change everything and turn everything into digital. And and it turned out to be a very good and enriching experience. One of the first tools that one of the first things that we put in place, it was a direct communication of us, the programming team, with the director that have been selected in order to prepare the Q&A that then were going to be aired. And another thing that worked good was the forum that were online discussion on a topic with directors talking. Those are, of course, not very new format, but at the same time, we were receiving questions by the director, and they were in demand of being together with other people. I mean, because of course, when you are in Chile and your festival is having a premiere, your film, is having a premiere in Switzerland, that is, so you can feel a little bit stranded, you can feel a little bit far from your film. And of course, this is, I think, one of the challenge of online film festival is to get the idea to the directors that they are close to their film. And I think that with the team of Nyon, we have been striving to do that, particularly last year. So I think that beside the how they say, the aperitif and the drink on that, okay, can be a little bit embarrassing. We all agree. I think that discussion on a certain topic with directors that otherwise doesn't have possibility to communicate among them, it's a very good tool, for example.
Yeah, I have to say I've seen a lot of those live Q&As or even pre-recorded as well as master classes. And I would be curious to hear, what do you think about them, and maybe what is the best form? Because I was curious to hear that many filmmakers find them surprisingly exhausting, sometimes even more so than the actual conversations online, especially, for example, if they can't actually answer the questions from the audience when it's just the moderator, because it seems that for them, it's actually questions from the audience. It's what makes it so special. I have to say that a few days ago, I was watching a seminar with George Clooney on Zoom, and this is a truly absurd experience. So just by talking to filmmakers that you invited, maybe What were their thoughts? Were they enjoying it, or is it still kind of awkward?
Well, last year I think that I was myself already as a first spectator, and we were having master classes during the festival. There was Claire Denis, was our maître du Réel, and the Emily Bougès, the artistic director, hosted a 3 hours masterclass with it. Of course, it was exhausting, but I think that it was one of the best moments for me of the festival. There was a lot of engagement from the public online, and the viewing number were great. And there was I think that in a way it's something that for me it's always interesting to hear a person talking and to hear this person talking in their own environment. It's something that also can create a little bit of a different relationship that you have with the director itself. I think in a way there are some people that are a little bit less shy to make questions also, and this is nice to see. And well, I think it's exhausting also for the moderator. Well, there is all this physical thing, the body language, and all. We know that in a room we are all together and you can feel differently than what you can feel online. But I think that master classes and discussion are fantastic. I mean, also online, and they really, because otherwise it's a streaming service, it doesn't make any difference. So it's really enriching and positive as experience. Waiting to be back in cinemas, of course.
Of course, I mean we're always assuming that's going to be an option one day. Victoria, I'm curious to hear about your experiences also by even watching the festivals. You know, this last year. I'm already saying last year. Like I think mentally I'm already over it.
About watching film festivals online. Well, in my experience, it's really difficult. It's like becoming more and more difficult and even impossible. And well, what can I say? Also, we're actually planning a Zoom event in the end of December, and we want to meet all Ukrainian film festivals there, our colleagues, and discuss actually how everything went for them. Because what we noticed, Docudays was the first festival online in Ukraine, and it was extremely popular and successful event, and it was severe lockdown back then. But then we have a few other big important festivals here, like Molodys Film Festival, Odessa Film Festival, and they had totally another context. And they also said unofficially to me that really people tired of watching films online, and there were a lot of people still, but maybe less, and for some screens it was difficult, to attract actually people and to discussions, because well, everybody is tired and everybody is expecting maybe that cinemas will come back. Yeah, and I think that we definitely need this physical offline event. Of course, maybe even if they will be limited, it's still really important to give them back, because I think online it's a really effective tool, but I think it's really not easy for us to have this effectiveness, 100%. I want to have my time for my laziness. I don't know how to say it.
Just a very, very honest way to put it.
Yeah.
And I'm, just thinking about what Rebecca said about people maybe not being as shy to ask questions. We are actually already have a question from the audience, and it's a long one, but I'm going to try to read the whole thing. It's from Doris Kittler, and I guess it's a question for all of you, really. So please go ahead. What do you think about how the pandemic affects the audience in terms of going back to cinemas? Now we are more and more getting used to watching movies at home with our beamer, or even worse, on our small notebook. Do you think that people will easily come back to cinemas and to film festivals and pay for it, etc.? Oh, Victoria, I saw you shaking head. So maybe
I don't know, in Ukraine, the story about cinemas is actually very sad, because well, they are working now. Officially, they are working, But now we have this quarantine of weekend quarantine. Let's say that Saturday and Sunday is officially like closed days for cinemas, but those 2 days are basically the main days for cinema. Yeah, like the most people, like much more people are coming during Saturday and Sunday, so they are struggling and actually dying. So I'm not sure what actually will be next year. I mean that's, yeah, and I believe that it will be much more difficult to get people back to cinemas, obviously, and so this will be like a long way struggle.
Melanie, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, just to say, we actually held back some of our June program this year in order to be able to put even a small portion of our 2020 official selection into cinemas over the autumn. So we've had to just actually cancel one of the weekenders that should have just gone because we've gone back into lockdown. But over October, we produced a number of screenings in the cinemas. And, you know, to say, the audience was, you know, a lot smaller than we would normally get for our June festival, for sure. And that's, you know, in part due to capacity limits anyway, because we've got a 2 meter like distancing rule in cinemas in the UK. But those audiences who did turn out, they were like, yeah, they just seemed so pleased to be there, you know, and they were just so engaged. I don't think we've ever had a record of 100% of audiences for any screening sticking around for a Q&A before, and that was happening consistently, even though the Q&As were almost always just, you know, like video call, like Skype Q&As, even like within the cinema. And of course, you know, it's because everyone's time's less pressured and we didn't have like 6 screenings going on back to back and so on. So of course the context was different, but yeah, I guess you just can't underestimate how much people like appreciated being able to turn out, you know, to the cinema once we did put screenings on. And the post-screening like discussions were incredible. And we surveyed audiences about, you know, how they felt about the safety measures and so on, and the experience was really positive. So I think we've got a lot of work to do together with our partner cinemas, all of us as a sector, to build confidence back in audiences in terms of the kind of safety measures that we could put in place. But yeah, I really think that there's something to be said for kind of Zoom fatigue, online fatigue, and a real hunger and desire for people to turn, you know, to come back together for that kind of big screen experience. I mean, I think it's just a completely different way of being able to absorb the film in a way that, you know, like without your distractions around you. And I really think that we can build that back up. So I think it's just about rebuilding confidence.
I think Venice was a good sign in the sense that you could really see that people were happy to be in the cinema. I think that this is like, I've never seen that many happy journalists in my life before. So yeah, let's hopefully people still want to go back. I'm curious if Christine has some thoughts on that. Do you think that people are still going to be waiting for that moment to go back?
I think I would even emphasize what Gerwin was saying. It's more than a paradox. A digital festival, in French we would say it's an oxymoron. It's contradiction in terms. We want to be in theaters. I think the best friend of the festivals are the theaters. So it is incredibly important that we keep that in mind. We're not platforms. We're able to use those tools, but what we want is to present film in theaters with an audience and with the director enjoying to present their film with audience. I mean, this is the core of what we do. So I think we, the entire industry, have been very responding, and we're just developing new tools that were around. We had an online version of FIPADOC for the professional from the very beginning, and we will keep doing that. But I think we shouldn't forget that the joy of what we do is to share films, and we don't want to share films with any of us being at home with a screen. We want to be in rooms, in theaters, and for us, I know that in France, the coming back to theaters is also going with festivals. We are asked by the theaters to be in the theater, to give the envy to and the will to be back. There's something special in festival for the theaters, is they bring a bit more than just films. They bring a director, they bring a debate, they bring exchanges, and this is what we like. So I think again, the industry has responded very well and is active, but whatever digitally we can invent, it will never replace. And responding to what you were saying about the industry, I think, again, the digital industry is possible, but we know the problem with that. It's not only that we don't have the parties. We like the parties also because they allow us to meet people we don't know. And the problem in this digital environment, it is very complex to meet people. You go to people you know, but if you don't know them, it's not, when you have a drink, you can start chatting and you see if something can come up. So there's a problem, very strong problem for me, for the newcomers. How do they get into the game? And also of what we like in festival or in markets, which is the unexpected. Why do we attend? We attend for great selection, but also for everything that happened in a festival that we didn't expect. And this is what we like in it. So yes, I think people will go back in theaters if we keep the theaters alive. So yes, we need to support them. And this is the reason I was saying we're trying to change as little as we can. We're trying to be in Biarritz, even if we have no certainty today that we can have the theaters. But till the last minute, we'll try, because I think this is what we do and what we like.
It's a very interesting thing that you just said, that the situation is easier for established filmmakers rather than the ones that are just starting up, because it's very hard to create this buzz that we all know from actual physical festivals. It's kind of difficult to do it online. But before, I see that we already have some more questions from the audience, but before we move into that, I just wanted to ask you all, I recently talked to sales agents about online festivals, and they said that the biggest issue, of course, is the question of safety. So how do you make filmmakers now, when you're thinking about programming, when you're talking to people, how can you make them feel safe? How can you work with a platform? I'm curious to hear some of the things that maybe you learned so far that can work, and also encourage people to actually participate in online festivals, because I know that for some, there are still too many risks involved, or we have geo-blocking. We can talk a little bit about that as well. But maybe also when choosing films, what can you do as a festival to make sure that people feel like they've been taken care of? Wonder if anybody has some thoughts on that. Maybe Gerwin, we can start with you.
Can you? I think I can, but and safety in what way? I mean, as in what can a festival do to make sure people don't pick up COVID at the festival, or safety in a digital, in the digital environment, safety for piracy, safety for online harassment. I don't know. What type of safety are we discussing?
Well, I would be especially interested in, how do you talk to filmmakers now? How do you explain what kind of platform do you want to use? How many views are going to be there, etc., so that they have some concrete notion of who is going to be watching those films and how many times, for example.
Yeah, so of course we make agreements with the like with a normal film that we would premiere. We would also let the filmmakers know how many screenings, how many seats, we would sell, and what we offer basically in return in terms of hospitality and access to platforms and etc. And in this case, we also make an agreement with the films that we invite and confirm to have a certain amount of VOD screenings, which I think we're also, but this it's like ongoing process, so I shouldn't say too much about it. But there will also be a certain share in revenue of the VOD screenings, basically because the festival doesn't offer hospitality and things like that, so it's not a normal full-scale festival. So we do, let's say, in that way, we do want to give something back, even if it's bloody money that we don't have probably. And of course, this filmmakers when they so currently, for instance, it's not possible for Rotterdam to. So we do expect physical screenings, but it will be very difficult to bring filmmakers to Rotterdam to early February, but I mean, who knows? But of course, filmmakers respond by saying, even if I have to crawl there, I will come. So I will quarantine for 2 weeks, and I don't expect anything, but I want to be there when my film is screening for the first time. And this of course I fully understand, and this is indeed why I'm in this business. But we have to be safe for everybody. This is clear. I mean, if also for Rotterdam Festival staff, for people here, not just for the filmmaker. So it can be very difficult and painful discussions. But as long as they are, so far they all go well, of course. But it's not easy. Yeah.
Yeah, because as you said, the situation is changing all the time. But now, I think at the beginning, perhaps when we all thought that this is going to be just temporary, people were more afraid of participating in online festivals. Now that it's staying with us for a bit, I would assume that maybe they're more open to it. Christine, I'm curious, when you're looking for new films now, do you often hear from filmmakers that they are afraid to participate because it might hurt their chances in the future working with streaming platforms, for example? Because I've heard those stories. I'm just curious if that's something you've encountered so far.
Well, we have made a choice, which is that we're doing a digital festival only for the professional. We're going to do some screening open, but very limited amount of them. We're going to try to be in Sierra and Biarritz, but we will not do a digital festival in the strict sense. The economical model is not easy. We are a very recent festival at the difference of Rotterdam or Sheffield, so we're not known. We consider we cannot compete with any platform. And then it's a choice that each festival is taking. I wanted to add something to the question of Jussi Rasta, who was saying, what is going to happen to the films that existed only on digital festival? I think there's a responsibility for the festivals to welcome films that have not been shown in theaters. I think this is a choice we made. We extended, and we're taking films that are not premiere and that have only had a digital life to get a chance for this film to be seen in theaters. And I think there's a lot of discussion going on between festivals. And I think that each of us should and will try to give a life to these films, because I think for the filmmakers, it's a very frustrating situation. So I think we know the films that have not been able to be shown with an audience, and I think each of us will take, or the one who wants some chance to get this film to be shown in Réel. So I think it's important for the filmmakers to keep in mind that this is their works that we're showing. So we need to find a way that they feel satisfied by this drastic parenthesis, and that we need to find a way that they feel at ease with what we're doing. This is what we do, is to show their work. So they need to be happy with the way we have handled their films over this pandemic crisis, I think. I think that's a very important issue.
And just to our audience who's watching us online, I just wanted to say that Christine is referring to questions from the audience from UC Rastas. Now I'm going to read it. Hi, well, hello, UC. What do you think about on-site festival screening possibilities for the films that premiered just before the pandemic? For these films, there has only been online festivals. Will they ever be seen in real screening in the big screen, real on-site festivals, as these films were created for? The festival window would be closing for these films soon, at least in the world before COVID. I'm curious if anybody else has any thoughts on that. Melanie?
Yeah, so we launched our call for entries a little earlier than usual this year, and we're taking films that premiered a little earlier than we would normally. So for us, any films that were completed or produced from March 2020 can still be eligible for our June 2021 festival, and that's to allow for just the fact, those films that were affected over that period. I guess this kind of relates to the security question. I mean, in terms of premieres, I should say that for us, it is really important that we are screening films that have already been made available in the UK. So across our non-competitive strands, that would still remain important to us. The films can have premiered or been online elsewhere, but not available in the UK. For our competitions, and we didn't think we had the right conditions to do competitions this year online, but next year hoping that we present the programme both in cinemas and online. It's really important to us to bring competitions back, and that's where we are looking for world and international premieres, but not for the rest of the programme. And I guess just on that, I think on the security point, I think there's a big difference between where we're putting films online for industry and films online for public. So we have always had, I think as Rotterdam has, we've always had an online player for registered industry delegates, and that platform for us is available worldwide, but you have to be accredited as a member of the industry as a delegate in order to access that. And then our public kind of VOD player, which is available for a limited period of time. Once you purchase the film, you can only watch it within a limited period of time. It's capped, and all the rest of it is only available in the UK, because we don't want to harm that film's chances of getting festival pickup or distribution or whatever outside of.
And I already heard some filmmakers who are telling me that at least this year, or maybe also next year, the whole notion of a premiere should change a little bit in order to maybe accommodate some people who just miss their chance, it seems. Do any of you agree with that? Should we be still as strict with international premieres, world premieres even, or is this time to kind of maybe think about films more than their status? I'm curious if anybody had experienced that and had to make a decision. I'm curious, maybe Rebecca would like to say something.
Yes, this is of course a complicated and long-standing question that was here before COVID as well. Well, first of all, yes, what I'm seeing now that we are in the midst of programming, I am also as Christina was saying, incredibly amazed by the quality and the quantity of film that are arriving. There are very high numbers. Vision du Réel is structured in a way in which, as Sheffield as well, and in which the competitive trend are requiring a premiere, and I don't think this is going to change for 2021. There are places in the festival that are pretty much beloved by the public and also by the professionals that don't require a premiere. So I think that this is a matter of balance. And once again, there are festivals that have by vocation to discover new film, in which I think that the premiere plays an important role also in for the promotion of the film itself. And I don't think that in this sense, the COVID situation will change how we will program Neon in 2021. But I think that more in general, this is a year zero for everybody for those kind of questions. There are a lot of things that have been made, and I think that there has been a lot of discussion and interesting and very rightful, and we are all here, I think, first of all, to ensure the well-being of films and filmmakers. And there have been a long discussion about how to protect them, and as the question of safety is indeed very important, and as Gerwin was saying, in many levels. And I think for the whole industry, it's an important issue. The question of geo-blocking, of premiering, and other topics that have been discussed a lot in this month. I think it's impossible to set only one rule in this moment. I think that every festival and every filmmaker should be, more of all, every programmer should be aware of what we're doing, if it's working for the well-being of the film or not. And this is many factors needs to be taken into account. The nature of the event, as I was saying, the status of the film when it was after its premiere, and the size of the festival, the size of the country, the way in which it was presented, the number of seats that have been booked on internet for the film, and etc., etc. So I think that we can have, like I say, a polar star, and this should be that we should never forget that we are working for films in festivals for filmmakers, and that every festival needs to decide according to that rule.
I like the description of a year zero. It makes me think of all those post-apocalyptic movies that we've seen over the years. But I actually
Let's hope not.
Let's hope not. Yes, so we don't want to be Kevin Costner stranded in the middle of nowhere. But I actually have a question specifically for you from Kim van Haaster. Hi, what kind of films does Vision du Réel looks for or wants to focus on for the next edition?
Yes, so Vision du Réel for the next edition is looking as for the past edition. That means we are always looking for films that are with the cinematic ambition and that have a strongly cinematic sides, and of course important story, and that try to push the boundaries and question the language they're using. I would say that we are looking for film, and we have never had a topic in the festival, and we will not start to have a topic now. So I think that this is something that stays as it was. We are looking for films more than for subjects.
And that kind of answers a little bit the following question that we have, and it's from Rosanne Gladue. I'm a student filmmaker from Canada. Do you have any tips for what the judges look for in films? I wonder if the judges refers to the juries, but maybe we can talk about programmers. For example, like just talking about your festivals, are there any specific things that you look for as Réan would like to know? Maybe Victoria would like to say something.
Well, we always, of course, maybe we look for films which speak to us. So not necessarily we have kind of very specific criteria. Like if we speak about competition, it's mostly pretty much depends of, yes, if this film speak to us. And so we have normally have a lot of discussions in our selection team, but also like for next year, because, as far as the topic of the festival will be connected to health issues and health rights. So we will be much focused on this topic, topic of health, diseases, empower diseases, and different kinds of, discourses, like political, medical, philosophical discourses about this notion, of disease. So we are much interested in films of this kind, but not necessarily, yes. Like good film is always good for us. And so we don't have this much strict, policy of premieres. Usually for us important only to have like Ukrainian premiere. So we are really open, to different kind of films. And the selection, our submission call is still active till the December 10th. So you're very welcome to submit films to Docudays.
Yeah, I think it's, this question is a little bit difficult. It's a little bit like asking, what are you looking for in a partner? Everybody says they want a tall blonde guy, and then they end up with a short, short brunette. So maybe it's just a question of chemistry, I wonder. But maybe if somebody wants to add anything, is there anything particular that you might be looking for, also based on what is happening in the world? I think Melanie a little bit talked about it before.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned that, we're interested in a few things that are kind of happening in the world right now. I mentioned Black Lives Matter and the kind of subject of unity and Brexit and so on. But yeah, I mean, really, yeah, as has been said before, we're looking for films. We too don't have any kind of overriding topic. That a film is kind of cinematic is really important to us, that we feel it has authorship, integrity. These are things that are really important to us, but I also appreciate that they're things that are kind of really subjective. We do program to strands, although this is kind of as much a communication tool for helping audiences navigate quite a vast program, more than it is something that I would say should necessarily guide what's kind of entered to us, because this is kind of more our kind of programmers' decisions as to what gets programmed into what strand. And there's always a kind of way of making like something fit. But I mean, as strands, if anybody wanted to look them up, there's details of them on our call for entries. But it's Into the World, just kind of big topics. It's kind of big global topics, I should say. Rhyme and Rhythm, which is where cinema meets other art forms like music, culture, dance docs. Ghosts and Apparitions, which is about collective memory and loss, and tends to be the strand that is the most experimental, also might make use of archive. And then Rebellions, which is about films that kind of look to change the world, and also that kind of challenge the status quo in how they're made and not just their subject. And then on top of that, we have our competitions, and we have our annual retrospective. But yeah, the details are on our call for entries also, which is open till February.
So in short, films that are able to change the world. So like no pressure for the aspiring filmmakers. But I also wanted to ask you all, because I noticed that with festivals going hybrid or online, and the question of geo-blocking being such an important one, what some people told me about is that a good thing that came out of it all is that a local audience became a little bit more active. A local audience, I'm referring to an audience of one country, or as in United States, for example, one state. I was told that you can geo-block for one state specifically. Is it something that you think can be positive? Because I remember that CPHDocs was one of the first festivals first to go online last minute. They actually said that they could see that people were tuning in from the whole country and not just one city as usual. Is it something that you saw, or maybe something you want to pay attention to during the next edition? I wonder if anybody has any thoughts, maybe Gerwin. We can't hear you. Oh, yeah.
But now you can. Sorry.
He's doing it on purpose.
No. It's the Zoom master who arranges this. I think in terms of bringing in a local audience, of course, a majority of the visitors for our festival are coming from Rotterdam, but at the same time, there are many people from the Netherlands, but also from all over Europe actually, who just take their holidays for a week in Rotterdam, and the real cinephiles. And Rotterdam already for many years we have a small satellite program that we make in the north in Groningen, and but also we present films in Eye Institute, for instance, or in the theater in Nijmegen. So we have already a long tradition of moving into of finding audience all over Holland. Actually, historically all the art house theaters. Holland has a very nice network of art house theaters in many cities. But it all started from the work of the festival in the early 70s, actually. So this I don't think COVID changes much there. Of course, the possibility the fact that we now will next to the screenings also present films, offer them on as VOD. This makes it possible to indeed find a new audience that maybe they for whatever reason they don't like to go to a theater, but maybe they have a great home cinema set and they love our cinema. Maybe so I'm sure we will find some new people also. Mm-hmm. But I don't see it necessarily. I think as part of the COVID, the only thing that's really part of the limitations that are set by COVID restrictions that comes out of it is the fact that we now, at least for our February competition program, we specifically ask the filmmakers and the rights holders to confirm that we are able to do VOD, which means that in some cases with films that maybe, let's say, of a more commercial nature, with a bigger production, where there are real financial or bigger financial risks in terms of possible piracy or etc., that it becomes more difficult to confirm those, because there are of course some very legitimate hesitations for bigger productions in this regard. Yeah.
I would actually love to talk about it some more, but before I do, I just wanted to say that Rebecca unfortunately needs to leave us a little bit earlier. So Rebecca, I just wanted to thank you so much for being with us and talking about the festival. I really hope that soon enough we can all go there and just see what you have programmed for us.
Well, thank you everybody, and sorry if I cannot stay with you longer. Well, I wish you well for the end of the discussion, and of course for the preparation. And yes, let's see each other, no? In real life as soon as possible.
In 2021, as you know, to borrow the name of this panel.
Yeah.
Ciao.
Ciao. Ciao.
Bye bye. It's actually a very interesting thing that you mentioned, that as we noticed, for example, with Cannes, it seems that the bigger the production, the bigger the problem when it comes to the festival these days, at least the festival that goes online or has online screenings. Would you say that in some way it might be this tiny window of opportunity for smaller films because they don't seem to be as restricted? They don't have to deal with, you know, other agreements, previous agreements. Sometimes those films has already pre-sold to many countries. Is it something that you noticed, as you said?
I mean, really, these things require some statistical backup for big claims. But it seems to me that indeed the fact that as long as cinemas are open, that the fact that there is no new James Bond or no new blockbuster, that this gives an opportunity to let's say, smaller films. I'm not very fond of the word, but whether this also works in the context of film festivals, that could be. That's something to research for statisticians and journalists.
Christine, you're smiling so wonderfully. I was wondering if you had something to add on that. Is that the moment for filmmakers to maybe get a place at the table, as some people describe it, that they wouldn't otherwise have?
Well, I hope it's true. It is true that there's a big problem for the theaters for the moment. All over Europe is all the US blockbusters who usually make people go to cinema, and they see the preview of other films, and that gives them a sense of going back to cinema to see the films that have less promotion. So it is a problem for all cinemas in all Europe that the big machine, the American blockbusters, are not getting the audience coming to the cinema. That's for sure. And hopefully there's going to be some room for films that are less marketed or less exposed in a situation like that. I was thinking also of what you said about responding to this question, how the film are judged and how to get selected and how to get an award one day. I think one of the difficulty of the idea that we change our base by opening to digital festival is we don't know anymore who we address our selection to. It's one thing to know your audience, you know the city you're based, you know your young festival or an old festival, you look at what films get more people into it, and you respond also to the expectation of your local public, because you know that some films I will like more, or you know, or you guess. So the problem when you lose this positioning in a city with a real audience is who do you select for? So you can select for yourself, choose what you consider is a good film, or a film with an impact, or a film that is going to change your way of looking at things, or a film that you're going to allow you to an incredible encounter with an artist, with a writer, I don't know. I think that's what makes each festival different from each other, is we are, when we select, we have in mind an audience. We choose also for them. Of course, I could select just the film I like. No, we don't. When we have this committee discussion, we also take into account the public and our public, the public we know. So, I think it is also part of the identity of a festival. I think this is very important to keep. The reason you could go to Rotterdam or to Kiev or to Sheffield, been to Sheffield many times, I knew why I was going to Sheffield. I knew there was something in the choices of Sheffield that I liked. I have amazing memories of Rotterdam. It's a few years time where I had the chance to attend, and I would remember. And I think this is one of the things I would love not to lose, is the identity and the difference of each of the festivals. So there's not one rule. I think we're all looking for good films. Yes, we're all looking for a cinematic experience, even if in FIPADOC we take films being produced for whatever screens, we don't care. They don't need to be produced for cinemas. They can be produced for another screen than a big screen. But we want good films, that's for sure. But then from festival to festival, each of us have an identity. And I think we don't want to lose, in a digital world, we don't want to lose this identity.
I'm wondering, do you think there are ways of finding out who is your audience once you go online? Any specific ways? Because of course, online you get this immediate feedback very often. People just comment they write about the films they've seen, whether they like them or not, or who the hell programmed that film this year. But are you planning something specific to maybe really understand who watched the films and who am I talking to, basically?
I mean, we surveyed our audience, the audience that participated in our online program from June until around now. To get an understanding of the demographic, where they were based, I think probably a little more non kind of Sheffield, non-Yorkshire, like further afield, but still within the UK. As I say, the public platform is available to UK only. And I think I said before, about 30% of those audiences were completely new to DocFest or hadn't visited it before physically. And the demographic looked a little different. Our audience is normally, in a normal year, is a very young audience. And the audience for online was just a little older. For example, there was more people with access issues or with disabilities that were accessing via online than physically, which is not surprising. So so we found out quite a bit about our audiences through surveying them, and as well also our delegates. And so I think that's something that we'll definitely continue to do, as you say, to think about who it is that we're programming for. But I mean, I guess I would also say this kind of also goes back to the strands, where you have, each of our festivals has have very different identities, but then even within each of our festivals, our strands have very different identities. So I feel like, Rebellions for us kind of reaches a more activist audience. Ghosts and Apparitions, a more kind of art cineast audience into the world, and Rhyme Rhythm, a broader audience, just for example. And I also think, going back to speaking about premieres, I think this is another reason why it remains important that we hold on to this idea of world and international premieres for our competitions, because as well as it opening up opportunities for new filmmakers and making sure that we're not all screening essentially the same films going around on the circuit, and being able to kind of open up opportunities for new filmmakers, diverse voices, etc. It's also about building the distinctiveness of each of our festivals. And I think where we each have a premiere policy, even for a small section of the festival, even just for certain competitions, whatever, that also helps to build that distinctiveness.
Yeah, I think it's understandable. And I just wanted to remind our audience that we still have a few minutes to ask questions. If you feel like, just write to us on Facebook, and I'm going to make sure that everybody heard. And now I have a question from Stefan Johan. A question to all the panelists, but I would like to hear from Victoria. We all want festivals back in theaters, but don't you think that hybrid festivals are a good way to bring festivals and docs to a place where there are no films and festivals? Talking about Ukraine, I heard Docudays UA's organizer telling last spring that they got audience online from Donetsk and territories occupied by Russia. These people are living in a no films area, and they could never come to the festival. Maybe Victoria could tell us how Docudays UA managed to show films outside of the capital bubble. So maybe Victoria, you would like to begin, given that you were called out already.
I'd like to say thank you, Stefan, for this question. Stefan is, of course, a good friend of us. A part of our great film community here. Truly, that was this experience was amazing, because somehow we managed to break this bubble, and a majority of our audience, like this online audience, were new people here, and there are a lot of people from regions. They normally have no possibility, to come to Kyiv to watch films. So we have like traveling festival, which is our another project. This is a festival all over Ukraine, and normally we do offline screenings. But yeah, that's true that the territories which are occupied by Russia now, and also Crimea in particular, we can't do offline screenings here anymore. So like online festival was a great opportunity for those people to watch films. Well, yeah, that was amazing. But like I'm also thinking like for the next year, you know, because let's say that this year everything was so unexpected, and we had, you know, to do like to take like very important choices like in a very short period of time, and because actually we planned our festival during 1 month, and we canceled offline festival like 1 week before the festival. And back then we chose the audience, you know, like we chose the audience. We did this festival because of audience, and that was I think that it was really good for the audience, but for filmmakers it wasn't that good, you know, because yes, we just take those films and screen them for many times, yes, and there was no this kind of good actually feedback with filmmakers. So like for the next half of the year, we also plan, you know, this hybrid festival, but I'm now also thinking how to do this. So like, you know, online part of the festival and offline part of the festival, so they won't compete, but they will complement each other, you know, because this is actually a big challenge, because yeah, though like online audience is like another part of the audience, but it's also same people in any way. So like next year, this is our like the main challenge and the big questions, and also the next big question, how to serve filmmakers and film industry as well, not only to our dear audience. That's another like big question we have to answer. Yeah, so that's how it is. Yeah, and yeah, that's it.
And I think we already talked about hybrid festivals a little bit at the beginning of our chat tonight. But it's interesting what you mentioned about last minute choices and last minute decisions, because I think almost all festivals had to deal with it in a way, because we are talking about government changing restrictions very quickly. I know many festivals, for example, in Poland right now, who are planning to go ahead with the hybrid edition, physical edition, only to find out mere days before that they just can proceed online. Do you think that there is, for example, for next year, assuming that we're still going to have to keep in mind certain restrictions, let's see how it goes. Are there any things that maybe festivals should avoid from your experience, maybe also attending other events, given more time? What would be something that could have been done better? I would be curious.
Yeah, actually, we learned like a lot of lessons from this year, and I think that's one of them is also about the number of films, also number of events, because like yeah, this year we programmed all 70 films like, you know, at once, and we did like many online talks, actually a lot of online talks with filmmakers and guests. And this is also very like I don't know, I mean that I think that maybe it's better less, but you know, better actually. So this is like a really big lesson, because yeah, you know, we did a lot of things. We do like joint like film this joint Q&A session, you know, when we put like few filmmakers, because it's actually impossible, you know, to do like 70 online Q&A sessions with like with one filmmaker each, you know, it's just impossible. So you have to do this kind of things to combine filmmakers, which is not always good. Yeah, so like for next year, definitely we'll do less but better, and we'll think how yeah.
I also think, I'm not sure if I'm muted, but
no, we can hear you.
So for instance, also in terms of how to organize online Q&As for premiere films, so for filmmakers who maybe are somewhere else altogether than in the theater, with an audience that is in the theater or not, etc. So I think if we would try to do this for everybody and open access in a way, it becomes very difficult to have an intimate or precise conversation. Even so even in as a Q&A moderator, you already immediately notice if you do host a live conversation in a huge theater or in a small one. It changes the nature of the discussion and the nature of how people react and how open they are about their own things already, if they are in a big theater or in a small one. So I think something that we will try to do is make sure that that we also organize Q&As in a much smaller setting, like almost create like a living room setting with a filmmaker and with an audience who has seen the film, and not have it open to everybody. So to compartmentalize that in a way.
I think it's a good point that everybody got a little bit greedy once we started to go online, because it seems that so much is possible, but there is only
people. Yeah, better not.
Yeah, there is only so much you can watch, I guess, as a audience member. And I have a question from Lucas Mainhardt. From your experience, is it better to keep strict timing for film screenings and debates, maybe even putting it together in one package? Or is it better to let the audience choose the time of the screening and not focus on certain times? It is sort of like virtual cinema versus Netflix question. Well, you're not muted, so you have to begin.
Okay. I personally, I think so. These are things we'll see. But what IDFA is doing, I think, is mostly to stream the films on a set time, so to emulate the experience that you would have if you wanted to go to see the film physically. So not to have a window of that the audience can see or decide when they want to see the film. What I do think is essential is that also as a programmer is that I try to see the film in the same way the audience would have to see it or is able to see it. This is less and less possible because we have to judge so many work in progress that are not graded, etc. And I mean, when I started in this work, we would still go to Rome or Madrid or whatever, and they would screen 35mm copies for us. And you would say start, and then you would say no, I don't want this, and then they would start another 35mm copy. This is now inconceivable, of course, for the audience. But at the same time, for programmers now, we can stop a film if somebody rings the door, or if somebody makes a phone call, or if we're bored, and then we continue again. So this is not how we what the film is. So it is important to present the film as much as possible, and to help the audience concentrate and focus, and so that they're not able to do things in their own time, but in a way let the film take over their time. This is part of what cinema is, and this makes it special. Otherwise, they can go. I mean, there are other art forms where it's different, but cinema in a way takes over your control of time and place. So I do think this is important. So whatever the outcome is in terms of streaming or in one time or in a longer set of time, but I do feel this is something we owe the filmmaker that we support to help the audience focus. Yeah.
And it's a good question here, because now that I think of it, part of the festival experience is always running to the cinema. Every time I talk to somebody, they're always running to a screening. They realize last minute that they have only 5 minutes, they grab the sandwich and they go. So yeah, I mean, do you think that it could be actually a more enjoyable experience to be limited in a way, because we are not limited when we're online, and by setting a proper hour for the screening and then having the audience kind of come together at the same time, do you think they might feel more like a community? Curious if anybody has any thoughts on that. Maybe Christine?
To be honest, I don't know. To be honest, I don't know. I agree with what Gerwin said, meaning you have to give the experience on not stopping a film and continue and go grab a beer or a cigarette or whatever. I think the experience of being together, watching at the same time, as ITFA is trying to do, and having live Q&A to recreate this experience is very important, and I understand the need for it. I don't think that festival can compete with platform. I don't think we're making at all the same proposal. I think that some festivals have a habit of having a membership community like hot dogs, and they deliver a certain amount of film amounts and all of that. So that's a very different scenario. Again, I don't want to feel nostalgic of anything, but I think what we all aim to is to be back in theaters and share this experience with the audience. Then there's a different scenario, which is making film available for the professional, because they can handle the distribution of this film, because some producers can find some good directors. That's a very different thing. And this is the reason we use the Cineuropa platform, which is supposed to be one of the more secured. And this is a tool for work. This is not enjoying and sharing an experience together. So I think these two things are not comparable. I think if you do a real digital festival, then I think the idea to have time schedule is very important. It is what we all notice also is a very simple thing, is we're not physically in a place. I am usually at this time of the year in Amsterdam, and nothing exists except what happened in Amsterdam. And I think it's incredibly complex to get the attention of people when they're not physically in the place. And so whatever makes them being localized in the festival is a good idea. Any tricks, any tips for that is a good idea, because what I find the most frustrating is to continue my everyday job while I'm supposed to be at ITFA. And this is, and you're conflicting yourself all the time about that. So yes, it is important for festival to create a digital environment that lock people in the place they would be. But I'm not saying it's easy. I think it's as difficult as turning digital festival into party time. We're all trying to invent way to get this feeling of having a good time together. And in front of a computer, the harder you do, there's no way for us to get this feeling. Maybe the new generation will have a different reaction. But I think there's something we all very attached to, is to be in a place, share something together, and have fun together.
Not to mention a few drinks, absolutely. And I actually have a follow-up questions from Pamela Bienzo-Bassafi. Hey, Pamela. Exactly. Have the festivals that already had the online version, Sheffield and Docudays, been able to compare both options? I can imagine it's harder to bring an audience to a Q&A that doesn't come directly after a virtual screening, but it still is feasible. And how have FIPADOC and Rotterdam decided on that? So maybe, Melanie, we can start with you, as Sheffield was mentioned the first.
Yeah, sorry, is this comparing the two as in films scheduled online versus just available for a period of time? Yeah, so
that is my guess. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so for the program that we put online from June to now, because it's on for another week or something, not the same program. We only made them available. We only made the films available for a certain period of time. We did not do scheduled screenings. So for us, most of our kind of industry activity is in our, panel sessions and our meat market and so on. That all happened at at scheduled live timed events. But for the film program, we put we made the films available between 2 weeks and a month, depending on the program, and didn't do scheduled events. But for next year, we are talking about doing basically running the film program in cinemas and online in parallel, whereby the schedule for online replicates the schedule for in the cinemas, for all of the reasons that Christine and Gerwin have just said that I agree with. I think what we would hope to do then is to make the films online, like available online thereafter, as some sort of catch-up service. It might be for a very limited amount of time for public, but I do think it's very important, particularly for industry, though they can join at the scheduled time to watch the screening on a certain day at a certain time. I do think it's really important for them to be able to go back to that film in their own time, So for the industry platform, we also use Zenondo. I think that's important as a kind of catch-up service for if they missed the screening.
Victoria, how was it in your case? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, as for Docudays, actually, yeah, same as Sheffield Doc, actually. This year, like our last festival, we didn't do scheduled screenings. Films were available for 2 weeks, basically, like all 70 films, But yes, and next year we also want to change this because of all of these reasons. And yeah, we'd like to use this kind of model as Melanie described, to do physical screenings and online screenings in parallel. Now actually have a huge discussion inside our team about that because some people don't like this idea, but I really do and would love to do this. Yeah, and yeah, maybe after the festival, we also want to do like kind of best of fest online program, something like this. Just, yes, to give people chance to come back to some films. But this is a plan, like part of the plan, and we'll see how it will go, yeah.
Christina, I think you wanted to add something?
I sort of lost it, I'm sorry. No, what I wanted to, I think one of the problem about the scheduled screening and the online and how they adapt, it is true that we're facing also an audience that is used to have replay because you have that today in television and because on your platforms you have no limitation on when you do that. So again, I think these debates and conversation are very difficult for us to decide because we always thinking of how the audience is going to react to that. So that's not an easy decision to take. I was also wondering on the Q&A as we are now, and we're still finishing the selection, we have decided that most of the Q&A would be pre-recorded because we have a lot of fans. So if you want to have Q&A with a lot of different directors, you need the time to produce them. And if you want to do them live, then when do you do them? If you have 4 or 5 films, usually in different theaters, you ask questions and get answers in the theater you are. But if you have that online, again, it's very complex to know how to satisfy the public. So what we are planning is to produce part of the Q&A in advance with members of the selection committee, with friends of us that love films and love directors, and that could have a discussion with the directors that will not respond to all the questions that could ask the public, but at least give them some additional material for the director to be able to explain certain things about the film he delivered, but also, and give him the liberty to talk about what he's done. And maybe it will not be answers to questions that the audience would have, but at least give him the chance to talk about his film. And I think that's something that the audience do not always have in mind, is if you're dealing with 150 films, how do you actually deal with live Q&A with all these films? Some festivals have a very big machinery behind them. It's not the case for all of us.
And I see we're running out of time, but maybe Gerwin still wants to add a few words.
I think Pamela, who is also part of Rotterdam's Q&A team for many years, we will be in touch and discuss details of what. But in general, I think what we will do is a combination of both. So with some pre-recorded introductions or question and answers with indeed festival programmers. But also, still, I think it is essential to certainly for films that we premiere to make possible and it's not only just premiere, but it's also often filmmakers who share their first efforts or first feature effort with the world to offer them the possibility to connect directly with an audience. I think this is essential. And they can talk to the likes of us every day of the year, but it's their audience in the end that they need to get to know, also to know what they made. Because it's only when they talk to an audience that they sometimes realize what it is that they were after or what they made. So I think this is still, and we will work hard to find let's say the right ways to offer the filmmakers this.
Yeah, I think online or not, we still really want to connect, and that's the beauty of festivals in either form. I just really wanted to thank to our audience and for all the questions, but most of all, thank you so much for being here with us tonight and for answering all those very, very complicated or complex questions sometimes.
All valid questions. Yeah.
All good questions. Thank you, Marta.
Thank you so much, and I really hope to see you all really soon and in a physical form, which is how we say it these days, right?
Exactly. 2021.
2021. Here is to hoping. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ciao.